Well, Ivan McKee, first of all, just a general point. David Torrance was making the point a few minutes ago that for many, if not most, voters in Scotland or members of the public in Scotland would say, look, you know, obviously you need common frameworks. Obviously we don't want standards for bacon to be different in Scotland than they are in England. Just go and do a deal on it. And frankly, spare us the details because it's not very interesting. So why does this have to be such a huge row?
Well, the issue is the fundamental principle and also the practical applicability of that. The fundamental principle is that there's powers that are in Scotland through the devolution settlement in the Scottish Parliament on behalf of the Scottish people who's got the capability and the authority to legislate on those and control those. The situation we've got at the moment is the UK government, under the guise of Brexit, are potentially taking back quite a number of those powers under the guise of common frameworks. We're very happy to agree common frameworks, but the point is they have to be agreed.
Yeah, but they're not taking back these powers because these powers were with Brussels.
No, there are issues that are devolved. Those powers are devolved powers under the devolution settlement, and it's the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government on behalf of the Scottish people that should be making decisions on those. If you look at the list of those powers, some of them are very significant. For example, this is around about fracking, this is around about state aid, this is around about some health aspects, how we manage legislation around about tobacco and alcohol and food standards, etc. We're trying to tackle obesity. Our health service needs to have the ability to tackle those kind of issues. So there's quite a range of issues there that are potentially quite significant and have a direct bearing on people's day-to-day lives. And it's important that those powers aren't chipped away at by the UK government. Those powers stay in Scotland so that Scotland can continue to pursue its distinctive approach to many of those policy areas. And not forgetting, there's issues around about trade bills that will come up here as well, around about whether the NHS, for example, in the Health Committee we've been talking about that, whether aspects of the NHS could end up, and Scotland could end up part of trade deals going forward, the UK government negotiates with third countries. Those are the important real issues that really affect people's day-to-day lives. So this isn't an abstract constitutional debate. It's really important people understand that, and that the Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament is able to keep control of those evolved powers.
But 1 minute you present this as, look, you know, we're just being reasonable, we just want agreement on these things, we accept there have to be common frameworks. The next moment you start talking about the TTP, where effectively what you're suggesting is that Scotland should have vetoes on deals which might be done between the British government and, for example, the United States of America.
I think on some of those issues I've just mentioned...
But that's a very different issue.
I think on some of those issues I've just mentioned, the people of Scotland would be very, very concerned if we didn't have vetoes on those kind of areas, and to allow the UK government to go and do deals with the US that would allow them access to our health service, for example. People would be horrified at that. So I think we're doing the right thing standing up for it. We agree there has to be common frameworks, but those should be agreements, not imposed by the UK government. We start down that road, we're on a very, very slippery slope, which is going to affect people's lives directly in Scotland, and it's not somewhere we're prepared to go.
Maurice Golding, coming back to this point that most people just probably think, just sort this out, why doesn't the British government just say, right, OK, we'll just negotiate all this stuff with the Scottish and Welsh government, there's not a problem, let's just do a deal?
Well, that's what exactly needs to be done. What we've heard
but it's not being done, is it?
Well, what we've heard from the SNP is grievance politics at its very worst. What we need the SNP to do is step up, ensure they're a sober, mature government.
So hang on a second. You say it's grievance politics at its very worst, but it is perfectly reasonable, is it not, for the Scottish, and remember, it's not just the SNP, it's the Scottish government and the Welsh government both saying, we're quite happy to have common frameworks, but they have to be agreed with us. How is that grievance politics at its very worst?
Well, we want to agree those common frameworks with the SNP, but as we've just heard, Ivan McKee supports vetoes, and that is simply not an acceptable way for Scottish businesses to be able to trade with the rest of the United Kingdom, which is the internal UK market. And you can hear there, I'm trying to make a reasonable point, and there's constant interjection. What we need to do...
No, there wasn't. There was a tiny little bit of interjection.
Let's get... you can't see his feet, to be honest. They're not shown on camera.
Both of you be quiet for a minute. Let's hear from James Kelly. James Kelly. Where are you? Are we moving? There you are, there. Right. You were hidden for a moment. Now, listen, doesn't this alarm you? You have got along with the SNP on this, on the grounds that, look, you know, it's reasonable, powers have to come to the Scottish Parliament. When you start hearing Ivan McKee basically saying he wants Scotland to have a veto on trade deals that might be done in the future between either Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn and the United States of America, doesn't that set off a few alarm bells in your head?
Well, we're not going to have the SNP government, you know, dictating to people, but the position here is...
But you're supporting them.
We've ended up in a position here because of the internal politics of the Tory party. They weren't able to secure an agreement internally, and therefore not able to secure an agreement with the Scottish Government. And then effectively, the Scottish Parliament has been used as a pawn in a negotiation game between the UK and Scottish governments. And we're just in the process of an 11-hour Finance Committee meeting, considering all the amendments to this continuity bill.
This history lesson you're giving us is very, very much appreciated.
It's time both parties got on to securing an agreement.
The bottom line here is that Labour argue, I mean, your critics would say you're useful idiots in this. You're going along with the SNP's continuity bill, you're saying that's important, and you've just had Ivan McKee saying that the Scottish government and the SNP would want vetoes on future trade deals done by a Jeremy Corbyn government.
Well, we've made it clear that we will support the protection of the devolution settlement, and we support the continuity. We supported the continuity bill from that aspect.
Did you vote against the Scotland Act?
But we've also submitted a number of amendments which go against the SNP's power grab on that bill. For example, in relation to regulations.
Okay, right.
So we've taken a firm position against both parties on this.
Mark Ruskell, is there a middle way on this? Or do you just back anything the SNP does?
Look, I think it's really important that the continuity bill, which we're discussing at Holyrood, actually learns from some of the problems that the UK bill has experienced down in Westminster.
Well, never mind the continuity bill. Why can't the British and Scottish governments do a deal? That's what I'm suggesting. And what I'm putting to you is...
we don't have the sort of mature politics that they have in other countries, unfortunately.
But when you hear Ivan McKee, I know you would probably agree with Ivan McKee on things like TTP and the effect on the health service. But you can understand, can't you, the British government listening to that would say, well, hang on a minute, we're not having the Scottish Parliament scuppering trade deals that we might do.
Let me answer that point, because I think it's an interesting point around trade that Ivan raises. If you look at countries like Belgium or Canada that have been deeply involved in negotiations around the CETA trade deal between Canada and the EU, those governments directly involved provincial governments and devolved governments in the negotiation. That's how mature politics works. If you're going to, you know, negotiate a trade deal with another trading bloc, you involve democratic legislatures around your country.
Okay,